The evening sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long, golden shadows across the quiet coastal stretch. Todd Ballinger took a deep breath, looking over at Lisa with a warm, triumphant smile. He could hardly believe that everything had gone according to plan. The quiet surrounding them felt like a sanctuary, a world created just for the two of them, away from the constant noise and pressure of their everyday lives. It was the whole weekend to themselves, an elusive escape they had talked about for so long but never thought they could actually manage. Lisa looked back at him, her eyes carrying a soft mixture of relief and persistent anxiety. She asked him how he had managed to work everything out with his mother, wondering how a weekend away could pass without raising any suspicion. Todd laughed lightly, shaking his head. He told her that he had not needed to work out anything at all because his mother had flown up to Sacramento that very morning. He leaned in slightly, a spark of pride in his eyes, as he decided to let her in on a little secret. He shared that his mother was getting an appointment to the bench. Lisa's eyes widened in genuine surprise. A judge. Todd beamed, asking if she could beat that, his mother becoming a judge. But as he looked closer at Lisa, he noticed the sudden shadow that crossed her face. He asked her what was wrong, sensing the heavy weight she seemed to carry inside. Todd reached out, his tone gentle as he addressed her concerns. He told her that she shouldn't feel so hesitant or guilty about being here with him like this. He teased her softly, saying it was just small-town thinking getting the better of her again. Lisa sighed, admitting that she was indeed just a small-town girl and simply could not help how she felt. It was all the lying that was getting to her. She explained how she felt terrible about calling the country club that morning, lying to them that she was sick so they would have to find another girl to serve at the party. Todd brushed it off reassuringly, telling her it was no big deal at all. In his eyes, she was far too special to be working as a waitress anyway. But Lisa's mind kept racing back to the complications of her life. She asked about Harold, wondering what would happen if he called her from Tucson and how she could possibly explain being away from the apartment for the entire weekend. Todd pointed out that she could easily tell him the phone was out of order. Besides, he reminded her of what she had said before, that Harold never called when he was away on business. Lisa agreed, though her voice trailed off. She wondered aloud if maybe Harold had something else going on inside himself. Todd dismissed the idea completely, saying not Harold. Lisa nodded slowly, remembering how Harold had told her when they got married that that was it for life. Todd looked at her carefully, asking if she was starting to feel sorry for him. Lisa confessed that she did not know, that maybe she was feeling a little guilty. Todd looked into her eyes with deep earnestness. He admitted that if he did not love her so much, he never would have let any of this get started in the first place, but now it was the best thing that had ever happened to either of them. Lisa smiled softly, acknowledging the truth in his words. Suddenly, a strange noise echoed through the stillness around them. Lisa gasped softly, asking what that was. Todd paused, listening intently, suggesting it might just be the wind coming from over by the structure. He asked if she wanted him to check it out, and when she nodded nervously, he stepped forward to investigate. Out of the shadows stepped a figure. It was Harold. Lisa froze, her breath catching in her throat. She tried to speak, stammering that it was not what he thought it was, begging him to listen. Harold's face was twisted in anger. He called her a filthy little tramp and told her to stop lying. Todd stepped between them immediately, trying to keep his composure, calling out to Murphy and telling him to take it easy and cool down for a minute. Harold yelled at Todd to shut up, declaring that he was going to take care of him right after he finished with her. Panic exploded in the room. A struggle broke out instantly, heavy and violent in the tight space. A sudden, deafening gunshot shattered the air. Silence followed, thick and terrifying. Harold collapsed to the floor, motionless. Lisa stood frozen, the smoking gun trembling in her hands. She burst into tears, crying out that she had not meant to shoot him. Todd ran to her side, repeating that he knew, holding her as she shook violently. He checked Harold's form on the floor. Todd looked up, his face pale, and told her that Harold was dead. Lisa buried her face in her hands, crying out in horror, feeling a wave of nausea wash over her. Todd quickly grabbed a glass, pouring her some water, encouraging her to drink it to settle her nerves. Through her tears, Lisa whispered a confession, saying she was not sorry he was dead, asking if that was an awful thing to say. Todd tried to gather his thoughts, stating that he better call the police right away. But Lisa stopped him, asking if they shouldn't talk to someone first. Todd hesitated, reminding her that he was a lawyer and they should approach this carefully, but then the reality of his own life hit him. He thought of his mother. Lisa picked up on it immediately, reminding him of what a scandal like this would do to his mother's career and reputation. Todd argued that it was an accident, that it was clearly self-defense, and his mother would understand that. Lisa agreed that she would understand, but pleaded with him to think about what it would do to her chances for the judicial appointment. Todd looked torn, staring at the body, and then at Lisa. He knew they were in a lot of trouble and needed to handle it, but he could not bear to destroy his mother's dream. Lisa looked at him with pleading eyes, begging him to trust her and reminding him of his love for her. Before they could decide their next move, the sound of footsteps approached outside. Someone was coming. A voice called out, asking if that was Ernest. Todd stepped toward the entrance, putting on a calm face as he greeted Mr. Ballinger. The man outside asked if anything was wrong. Todd quickly laughed it off, explaining that a friend of his had just had a little too much to drink, that was all. The man offered to help, but Todd politely declined, saying they would just get him to walk it off. The man wished Mr. Ballinger a good night and walked away into the darkness. Once the coast was clear, Todd and Lisa moved quickly under the cover of night. They needed to dispose of the evidence before anyone else stumbled upon them. Out near the water, Todd looked for something heavy to submerge the body. A local worker nearby mentioned using some heavy chain to weight down an old trunk, suggesting it was a good idea. They secured the heavy anchor chain around the trunk containing Harold's body and dropped it into the deep ocean waters, watching it disappear beneath the dark waves. Todd reminded Lisa to make sure the gun was taken care of as well, securing it back at the boathouse so no one could ever trace it back to them. Meanwhile, miles away, the seasoned private investigator Barnaby Jones was hard at work unraveling a completely different thread of the same web. He sat down with a client, an anxious woman named Mrs. Harris, who had hired him to track down her missing husband, Harold Burke. Barnaby explained what he had uncovered so far. He noted that when he tracked the husband down through his social security number, he discovered the man had taken a position with a real estate firm under a completely different name, Harold Murphy. This alias had made it much harder to find him initially. But that was not the only discovery. Barnaby gently informed his client that the pretty young waitress she thought her husband might have run away with was still around, and that Harold had actually married her. Mrs. Harris gasped in disbelief, stating that that could not be possible because they were not even divorced. Barnaby explained that he had asked his assistant, Betty, to call her husband's office that morning to see if he would be there. The lady who answered the phone did not know his whereabouts, but suggested calling his apartment to talk to his wife. Mrs. Harris sat back, devastated by the realization that her husband was living a double life with another woman while she was left alone to raise their child, Betsy. Overwhelmed with anger, Mrs. Harris declared that she wanted him in jail, that she wanted to see him put behind bars for everything he had done to her. Barnaby looked at her compassionately and gently asked about her daughter, Betsy. He asked if it would really do her daughter any good to have her father in jail. Mrs. Harris paused, taking a deep breath as the truth of his words sank in. She admitted he was right, and that she did not truly want revenge. What she really needed now was a divorce and enough child support to ensure Betsy had some of the advantages that other kids enjoyed. Barnaby nodded warmly, agreeing that it was the best way to handle the situation. Later that afternoon, back near the marina, an old local handyman named Andy was busy working around the tool shed. Todd Ballinger approached him, pretending to look for a simple tool, asking if Andy had seen a screwdriver. Andy handed it over and then paused, looking at Todd with a thoughtful expression. Andy asked him about that old trunk that had been sitting in the shed earlier, mentioning that it had an old, rusting anchor chain inside. Andy explained that he had thought he could make a couple of dollars selling the scrap metal, unless Todd had a better use for it. Todd tried to act indifferent, saying he had no special use for it. But Andy pressed on, mentioning that he could be mistaken, but he was fairly sure he saw that trunk in the shed before he went home for dinner, and when he came back later on his walk, it was completely gone. Andy looked Todd straight in the eye, noting that it was Todd driving away from the pier late last night, accompanied by a young lady. Todd froze for a fraction of a second before recovering his cool. Andy remarked that if it was not Todd, maybe they had better call the sheriff to report a theft. Todd quickly intervened, saying there was no need for that. He admitted it was indeed him, claiming he had a lot of odds and ends around the property he wanted to throw out, so he used the old trunk and the anchor chain to junk them all together. He offered to pay Andy for whatever money he would have made selling the scrap chain. Andy smiled slyly, stating there was no need to pay for the chain, but as long as they were on the subject of money, he noted that lots of repairs were needed around the place, and he could do them for a reasonable price. Todd agreed to talk about it later, but Andy warned him not to wait too long, commenting on how inflation was making the price of everything keep going up and up. While Todd was dealing with the handyman's subtle pressure, Barnaby Jones arrived at the real estate office where Harold Murphy used to work. The office manager, Frank Delbert, was busy chatting about safety and security, complaining about how burglaries, robberies, and crime made it feel like a man and his wife were not safe in their own homes anymore. Frank introduced himself warmly and offered Barnaby some cake and coffee while offering to show him what accommodations were available at the Sunshine Retirement Village. Barnaby politely thanked Mr. Delbert, but explained that he had come specifically to see Harold Murphy on a personal matter. Frank scoffed, informing Barnaby that Murphy did not work there anymore. When Barnaby asked if he had left for a better job, Frank replied that a man who did what Murphy did not need another job. He needed a psychiatrist. Frank explained his frustration, revealing that Murphy had just tossed away a $1,600 commission after working on it for weeks. Then, just the day before, when he was supposed to fly to Tucson to meet a major client and close the deal, he simply up and quit without warning. Barnaby noted this critical piece of information and asked for Murphy's home address. Frank gave it to him, listing it as Franklin Boulevard at the Graybriar Apartments. Barnaby thanked him for his time and made a friendly remark about keeping the retirement village in mind before heading out to follow the lead. Back at the boathouse near the water, Lisa met Todd in secret, trembling with nervous energy. She asked if he had found the item, and Todd confirmed he had retrieved the weapon from the boathouse. Lisa let out a massive sigh of relief, stating she did not think anyone could trace it to her, but she did not want to take any chances. Todd wrapped his arms around her, promising that everything was going to be all right. Lisa looked up into his eyes, asking him to promise her, and he reaffirmed his promise softly. Lisa apologized sincerely for dragging him into all this trouble, but Todd told her that what happened had happened, and apologizing would not change it. He stressed that the most important thing for them to do from now on was to stay calm and maintain their cover. Lisa explained that she had arranged everything at her apartment complex so that all the neighbors and management believed Harold was away in Tucson on business. Todd approved, telling her to keep that story going and to let people know eventually that he would be away for a very long time. Lisa nervously asked what would happen if someone grew suspicious. Todd advised her that after a week or so, she should simply give notice that she was moving, telling everyone her husband had sent word for her to join him elsewhere. Lisa agreed that sounded simple enough. However, Todd added a strict instruction, telling her she better not come over to his house anymore without calling first. When Lisa asked why, Todd explained that his mother was flying in from Sacramento that very afternoon, and he had no idea how long she planned to stay. Suddenly, Todd's phone rang. He picked it up, identifying himself. A harsh, distorted voice on the other end spoke immediately, stating that he had seen Todd and his girlfriend on the pier late last night. Todd demanded to know who was calling, but the voice simply claimed to be a friend who wanted money to keep his mouth shut. Todd tried to play dumb, claiming he did not know what the caller was talking about. The voice on the line made it terrifyingly clear, explicitly mentioning a trunk sitting at the bottom of the ocean and asking what was hidden inside it. The blackmailer demanded $25,000, insisting he wanted it that very night. Todd tried to buy time, saying he needed time to think it over, but the caller cut him off sharply. The The blackmailer warned that if the money was not ready tonight, he would go straight to the police, promising to call back later with specific instructions on where to deliver the cash. Todd hung up the phone, his face drained of color. Lisa stepped closer, asking who that was. Todd looked at her in sheer terror, revealing that someone had seen them last night and knew exactly where they had hidden the body. Shortly after, Barnaby Jones arrived at the Graybriar Apartments on Franklin Boulevard. As he walked toward the building, he noticed Lisa carrying several heavy packages. He stepped up politely, offering her a hand. Lisa looked at him in surprise, asking how he knew her name and if they had met before. Barnaby introduced himself, explaining that he recognized her from a photograph and that he was a private investigator who had come to see Mr. Murphy. Lisa quickly covered, stating that her husband was out of town at the moment. Barnaby helped her carry the packages inside her apartment. Once inside, Barnaby casually asked if her husband was going to be out of town for long. Lisa replied that he was away on business in Tucson. Barnaby paused, noting gently that it was funny because when he spoke to the people at the real estate office, they said Mr. Murphy was not going to Tucson and had actually quit his job. Lisa flinched slightly, quickly changing her story, claiming that it was not Tucson after all, but Phoenix. She laughed nervously, saying her husband traveled so much that she always got those cities confused, adding that he had a lead on a new job there. She then asked what this visit was all about. Barnaby sat down, explaining that it was a domestic problem, which was never pleasant. He introduced the name of his client, Mrs. Harris, and showed Lisa a photograph of Harold Burke. Lisa looked at the photo and immediately denied it, saying it was impossible because the man in the picture was her husband, Harold. Barnaby gently explained the truth, stating that from the looks of it, her husband appeared to have 2 wives. Lisa shook her head in shock, insisting that she had married Harold in Reno on their way down from Seattle. Barnaby expressed his sympathy, wishing it were a mistake, but revealed that there was a child involved. He explained that Mrs. Harris wanted to meet with Harold to work out child support for their young daughter. Overwhelmed by the revelation, Lisa poured herself a drink. Barnaby declined a drink for himself, expressing his understanding of how shocking this must be for her. He asked if she could provide an address where he might locate Mr. Murphy in Phoenix, so he would not have to trouble her further. Lisa claimed she did not even know where he was staying, but promised that if she heard from him, she would have him contact Barnaby right away. Barnaby thanked her, noting that he would like to sort everything out without it becoming an official police matter. Later that afternoon, Todd returned home to find his mother, Rose Ballinger, settling in. He greeted her warmly, apologizing for not meeting her plane because he had gotten tied up with work. His mother smiled affectionately, joking that he had met every plane she had ever taken. Todd congratulated her warmly, asking if he should start calling her Your Honor. Rose laughed, warning him that if he ever called her that, she would disown him. She proudly announced that the governor was going to officially announce her judicial appointment next Thursday. Todd embraced her, saying his father would be so proud of her. As Todd picked up her bags, Rose casually mentioned a call from the bank regarding a $25,000 withdrawal Todd had made from their joint account. She noted how banks were notoriously cautious about family accounts. She asked if he wanted to tell her what the money was for, but added that he did not have to unless he wanted to. Todd thanked her for her trust. The phone rang,